This series on women in science, technology, and business is brought to you by Zoho Corporation. Zoho is the operating system for business.
Hello, I'm Kamla. My guest today is Hadiyah Mujhid. She is an engineer, entrepreneur, and the founder of HBCUvc. Welcome, Hadiyah. I guess you go by the name Dia?
Yes.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. Now, you have a very interesting background. Yes. You know, you've done a whole bunch of things. You have worked at Lockheed Martin, then you worked in startups, you were part of Black Founders, you've started an incubator with your husband, and now you're with HBCUvc, which we'll be talking about. What drives you?
That's an interesting question. For me, I think just natural curiosity. And so in problem solving. Right? So I've always, when I get curious about any subject matter, or if I see that there's a gap or a problem that needs to be solved, I tend to lean towards it when I can. I think now that I'm later in my career, I do have the privilege to kind of jump around a little bit more easier to try and explore more things. So I really think it's just a natural curiosity and a tendency to want to solve problems that kind of drives some of the programs that I've been involved in.
It was interesting you used the word privileged. Mm-hmm. Why did you use that word?
I think not everyone has the privilege to follow their natural curiosity, whether it's for economic reasons or whatsoever. So someone may be naturally curious, about car design. Let's just say car design, and they may not know how to get in it, but their day-to-day may be at a cashier, as a supermarket, and maybe they have a family that depend on them, and so they just may not have that privilege to kind of follow that natural curiosity.
Who was curious in your family? How did you inherit this quality? Was this a learned thing, or did you find it in the air when you were growing up?
I actually don't know specifically how I developed a natural curiosity. I think being raised in a family, there weren't any limitations on what I could do in terms of, I never thought that I couldn't do something because it was math related or science related. So I think
there were no barriers?
Yeah, there didn't feel like there was any barriers. There may have been some barriers,
okay.
But it didn't feel to me that the barriers were present.
So you pursued your curiosity, and
yes.
But that curiosity was also driven by a purpose. In your case, it looks like.
Yeah.
If we look at HBCUvc.
Yes, and I think that that's later in my career that I've been able to bring in some of the social impact. Again, I worked for Lockheed Martin for 10 years, and I couldn't say that there was a natural purpose with me working with Lockheed Martin. Definitely while I was there were specific problem sets that I had a good time working on and enjoyed working on. But I don't think, looking back, I went to Lockheed Martin thinking, with a driven and passion for the work that they overall do.
So tell us about HBCUvc.
So HBCUvc is a not-for-profit organization that is designed to increase the racial diversity in venture capital. So the way that the program works is that we have
venture capital in Silicon Valley or all across the nation?
Across the nation, or I would love for it to be globally. We see venture capital as an important piece in the tech entrepreneurship ecosystem. We also see tech entrepreneurship as an important piece in, creating economic opportunities in certain communities, and especially, myself, I come from an underserved community. So when you look at...
When you say underserved, what do you mean?
That's a good question. So I come from my community. I think my community is mainly the community I grew up in. Is mainly Black. People consider themselves to be Black or brown, and this is not the case for everyone in this country who identifies as being Black or brown. But for my community, we were typically in the lower socioeconomic status.
So the opportunities to break the barriers at that level is low. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
From an economic perspective, right? I think for me, you could say that I grew up poor. I never had the feeling that I grew up poor. However, I did know if I ever made a request relating to money, it usually was a no.
So you grew up, you knew what your limitations were economically.
Economically.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why historically black colleges and universities? Why did you go that route?
So the program is geared towards racial diversity. Specifically, right now we're focused on African Americans. And when you look at the racial demographics of HBCUs, majority of the HBCUs are at least 80% African American, not African American, but just of African descent, because we do have a lot of international students coming from other locations. And so having that, one, the pure density of being able to reach our target population, in addition to when you look at the success of HBCUs and how many successful alumni that they've produced throughout their existence, it was a natural choice.
Okay, and there are what, about 100 HBCUs?
There are 100 HBCUs located within the United States, as well as one in the Virgin Islands.
Oh, one in the Virgin Islands.
Yes.
Okay. So how does it work? Are you working with all of them, or have you handpicked a few?
Right now, we have 3 pilot programs that are running at 3 universities, one university in Texas, another one in Tennessee, and another one in Florida.
Oh, so they're all in the South.
Majority of them are in the South. If you look at the purpose and the founding mission of the HBCUs, they were to allow access to blacks in this country at a time where they could not receive education from primarily white institutions. So you'll find them majority in the South. You do have a few that are further up north, but majority in the South.
So many of them are probably 100 years old because it probably
Yes.
came after the Civil War.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so they're about 100 years old. So that's why they're called historically black colleges.
Yes.
Okay, so how does the system work? So what do? How do you help students?
So there are 3 components of the program. Students participate, they have the opportunity to participate in training as well as an externship where we're partnered with investment firms. So throughout the school year, they work with venture capital firms to get real venture capital experience. The second part of the program is a mentorship. So they're assigned a mentor who is a professional venture capitalist, and they're usually talk to their mentor once a month, and they have the opportunities to ask questions about the career, professional advice, sometimes questions relating to their externship. And then the third component is that we want to make sure that the students that we work with are helping to share what they learn, as well as build entrepreneurship activity on their campuses. So they organize events to talk about entrepreneurship as well as venture capital. So one of our universities is at Fisk University, which is in Nashville, Tennessee. They hosted an event, the students organized an event that's called Understanding the Deals Behind Shark Tank, which is a popular TV show. But Shark Tank, the concept of asking for money for a percentage of your company is what venture capital is. So,
And it's also brutal.
Yeah, so the show is very brutal, but you know, it's interesting because venture capital is an industry that most people have never heard of. But Shark Tank is a show that I would say the average person in America has heard of. And so that's a way to like bridge the divide and talk about what venture capital is.
So what you're doing is you're matching the students with VCs and mentors, and then you're creating like an ambassadorship program where they go back to their colleges and then create awareness. And
Yes.
Okay, so that's what you're doing.
Yes.
Okay. You grew up in Philadelphia.
I did.
And your grandmother was the one who was the head of the family.
I would say so. I think she's still the head of the family. She's in Miami now, but she definitely, when she calls, she calls.
So, but your grandmother couldn't get her education.
No, my grandmother, she grew up in Jamaica, and her background, was a little bit different. I know that, at a young age in Jamaica, she started a family, and then she got to a point in her family where she realized that she was having children, that she didn't think that there was enough education opportunity and economic opportunity for her children in America. So what was very interesting is she actually left her children at a young age to come to the United States and start building, providing a way for them to get here. So when she came actually in the 60s, the late 60s, to the United States.
Where? To Philadelphia?
No, she actually, I think, she was in New York for a little bit. I really don't know her, but I know she was in New York for a little bit. And I know that she worked as many jobs as possible and saved up as much as possible. And when she got to the chance to save up and bring one of her children over, my grandmother had 7 children.
Oh.
She would bring them over, but usually she brought them over at an age where they can also start working.
Well, so they would be economically independent.
Right.
Okay.
And so what I've found, and my mother was the third, she's the third oldest in her family, so the third one who came here, and she came here roughly in the late 70s. And when she came here, she kind of joined the same pattern that her older sisters and brother joined, where they were working. And some of the jobs that they did was, sometimes if watching other children, nannying, cleaning, offices at night.
So there was no sense of entitlement?
No, I don't think that there was a sense of entitlement at all.
They had to work.
They had to work. But I think what is interesting is that the oldest ones, they had the opportunity to work and pool their money together. And the younger ones, when they came over specifically for education opportunities. So my aunts and my uncles, when they did come over, they came over and they went directly to college.
So your aunts and uncles
Yes.
went to college. So what did they study?
So I have I have an aunt who became a lawyer. My uncle, who I'm probably closest with, studied computer science, and another aunt who became a teacher.
Okay, so you grew up then in a household. That's where your natural curiosity
Yes.
Probably was kindled.
Yes. So
That you had all these aunts and uncles, and they're probably pouring over their books.
Yeah. So and one thing I didn't mention is that like I said, my mom came over here in the late 70s. She met my father soon after, and this was still during the period of my younger aunts and uncles who aren't too much older than me. I think like maybe 15 years. So I had the opportunity to watch them go to college, and we were all living in the same house.
Okay. And then you thought you were going to become a doctor.
Yes.
So you were in a pre-med track.
Yes.
What happened?
Yes. So I think when I started university, I was very money driven.
Why?
Well, just knowing that money was a thing that I saw in my family that people sought after, right? Just because there was a limited amount. So kind of like opened a book and found out what was the high salary that I could do. Didn't know anything about the careers, but just looked at straight numbers, right? Of course, you look at now, like in terms of the amount of hours people work versus what they make, you can kind of see a difference. But for me, being a doctor or dentist hit that number. So I started on a pre-med track at university, and within a year or two, I just didn't have a natural taste or love for chemistry.
Why is that? You're good at math and science.
I am, and I think
I thought I was the only one who could balance equations.
No, and it's funny because I extremely love math, and you'll find that there's a natural balance between math and chemistry. But I think I had just had a personal experience when I was in high school that put a block around chemistry.
Was it the teacher?
I had a teacher who I didn't necessarily agree with, and that kind of unfortunately put a stain on me for chemistry. And here I am in my second year of college, and I'm like, oh, I have to struggle for chemistry. And they're like, well, if you're going to be pre-med, there's going to be a lot of chemistry that you have to do. And I then at that point just took the lazy route. And
well, computer science is lazy route.
For me, it was a lazy route. At that point, I was like, okay, I have 2 more years.
Because it probably came naturally.
It did come,
logic and
it did come naturally. And what it also did is that, I remember my uncle, again, who was a computer science major. So some of the things that I didn't know at that time that I was exposed to, but I was exposed to computer science at a very young age, just from the nature of being
computers too?
Computers as well, just from the nature of him being in a household growing up, and just shadowing him. So, going to a computer field just seemed like a natural choice at that time.
Do you think you would have pursued pre-med had you gotten into University of Pennsylvania, which is your home school? Yeah. You thought it would be a shoo-in for you to get in, but you didn't get in.
No, I didn't get in. So,
and was that a big disappointment?
For me, it was. At the time, it seemed
like the whole world
was in. And if you're high school girls, we are very much dramatic, and we think one thing is going to ruin the rest of our lives. And I was very much determined at that time to go to University of Penn. My aunt went to University of Penn, and it was for me I had not really thought about leaving home. I ended up going to University of Maryland Eastern Shore, which is a few hours away. But I thought that I would stay in Philadelphia, and University of Penn I thought was the best choice to stay at home. And I didn't get in, and that felt like the end of the world. I don't know specifically, just because I had that block against chemistry, if going to University of Penn would have made the difference.
Because you would have been in home turf. You would have been in home turf and you would have struggled through it.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're at home, in your home environment, you tend to work a little harder.
Well, and then also sometimes when you're at home, you can fall into a natural tendency and comfort zone. So I don't think that made a difference. I actually think I went to University of Maryland Eastern Shore, which ended up being an HBCU, and I did not know it at the time that I chose to go there. But that ended up being a really great experience for me, and one that was affirming for me for my college education.
So school was a shoo-in.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And you made a lazy choice. And then you got into Lockheed Martin. And what did you do with your first paycheck?
So this is me being overly ambitious at 20 years. And
you were only 20?
20, soon to be 21. I have a late birthday in the year. So
Okay.
when you graduate, you end up being...
Okay.
So I think when I graduated, I was 20, and then later in the year you turn 21. But being super ambitious and being so economic driven, the first thing I did, not specifically with the first paycheck, but with the first few paychecks, is save up to make a down payment on a house. And so when I graduated from college, I went and lived with my mother for a few months, and I'm really good at being cheap and not being able to spend anything, and that works well, especially if your parents are can allow that. And again, that is another privilege. So,
what did your grandmother say when you told her that you're going to be buying a home?
I actually don't remember what my grandmother said at the time. No,
she must have been over the moon.
She may have, but my grandmother is also extremely economic driven, and I remember the first house and I didn't know this until later, but the first house that I was born in, my grandmother owned. Like every house that we've lived in, we lived in a few houses in Philadelphia. My grandmother owned them, and I didn't know that. And so that house where we lived, it was a home in North Philadelphia. We were there, and my grandmother at that point decided to move to another house, and my mom had just recently got married, so she gave that house to my mom and my father. And I was born in that house. And I didn't know that at the time. Eventually, my parents divorced, and we moved to the additional house.
So she owned all the homes?
So she had owned a few homes.
So it was in the blood?
Yeah, I guess so.
So you bought did you buy just one home, or did you buy multiple homes?
Yeah, so I started out with one home. And again, being economic driven. And I got to the point where I was able to purchase additional properties within the Philadelphia area as for rental property.
Wow. So how many did you end up owning then?
I think at one point a total of 4.
How did you manage the paperwork and doing your work and maintaining the homes? Wasn't that a drag on you?
It did become too much, especially I think the last property that I owned carried a lot of maintenance. And at that time, I was in there doing it, going to Home Depot, figuring out how to fix things and doing it on my own, and maybe dragging a few friends over to help me do some things. But I just eventually grew tired of it and ended up selling all of the houses.
So are you a homeowner now?
No, I'm not. San Francisco.
You're not?
No, the San Francisco San Francisco real estate market is very different than the Philadelphia real estate market.
So what do you think it'll take to fix the housing crisis in this area, San Francisco and Silicon Valley?
Oh, well, I honestly don't know.
No, as previous homeowner,
Yeah.
you know, you must have looked at it. What do you think is the reason why it's such a tight housing market here?
Well, you have people who will pay for it, right? And you have the companies here. You have companies who are paying a certain amount of money, and you have the wealth here. So everyone wants to be around these certain companies, and that can drive up the price as well as a limited supply. But for me, I think, it can be unfortunate for some people who are starting out here, some of the new grads who are starting out here trying to establish themselves, because they're actually going into a tough real estate market.
So jumping back to you being an engineer, what did you think an engineer would do? Did you have an idea? I know you had your Uncle Nick, who was an engineer.
Yes.
But did you have an idea of what an engineer would do?
I don't think so, because my uncle, even though he was an engineer, when you talk about technology and IT and software, it's such a huge industry, right? And his specific focus, and I've worked with him like even throughout college, in high school, he owned his own company where he did a lot of IT administration work. But he was focused on IT administration, system administration.
Setting up servers.
Setting up servers. At that time, every company will have servers. They would have a server room, and if they moved, then someone would have to come and redo it, which is a lot different now.
So you didn't do software kind of coding?
No, other than standard websites, no, I didn't. But like I said, at that time, the IT industry was different. Now everything for the companies now starting up, everything they can rely on a server in the cloud. So, when I graduated undergrad, I just really was excited about the salary amount. I had no idea what a software engineer, and that was my title, a software engineer would do coming out of college.
You had no idea?
No idea.
What would you say your young self, if you were to go back and be 17 again, what would you do?
17?
Because you were 20 when you graduated, right?
Yes. So 17 going into college.
Would you go into the same college, or would you move to the West Coast?
No, absolutely. I would go into the same college. Like I said, the experience that I had in undergrad, and even including the people that I met, my friends in college, and this is what I mean in terms of HBCUs really do produce, a high quality and a good amount of students. So many of my friends, because I started with pre-med, my friends, they went on to become doctors. One is a neurosurgeon, lawyers, and we were.
Are you the only software engineer?
I'm not. There are two others who are software engineers who are doing some really great work as well. But it was a really good experience, and I don't think there's anywhere in the world outside of HBCU where you'll be able to have, this amount of friends in a network who look like you and who also have the same professional drive because of the education that you received.
Have you had any mentors help you through and expand your network?
Yes, and I would say more from an unofficial capacity, but throughout my life, I think I've been very fortunate to have people who've, helped me no matter where I was in a career, and especially now with the new program, HBCUvc, having some of our investor mentors be able to get behind the program and help expand, not only for me and the program, but for our students as well.
So this is a not-for-profit organization?
It is a not-for-profit organization.
Okay.
Yes.
And you recently got funding from Kaufman Foundation?
Yes.
And are you looking for more funding?
Yes, absolutely. So the funding that we have from Kaufman Foundation will roughly carry us for a year, but in order to sustain the program for a long term, we have to, bring in more funding.
How excited or nervous are you because you have a lot resting on your shoulder.
Yeah, definitely extremely nervous, and especially when you start to, right now we have 9 students in the program, and they're extremely excited about the opportunity for the program. So for me, I want to make sure that this program continues for them. Some of them have another year in college, and not only them, but expand it to other students who, had not heard, maybe curious about the tech industry, and then, having them get exposure to the tech industry and venture capital, I think it's a priceless experience.
Okay, I'm going to switch gear and ask you 3 questions. This is from the Prowse questionnaire. What is your favorite occupation?
Problem solver.
Who are your heroes in real life?
My family, my grandmother, my uncle, those are my heroes.
Do you still talk to them?
Yes.
Okay. And what is your motto?
My motto? Always, learn. I think, Steve Jobs has to stay curious thing to me, which I think is closely aligned to, keep learning no matter what your age or what your situation is.
You learned persistence from your grandmother.
Yeah.
And you mentioned before we did the interview that you're mission-driven. So what is your mission?
My mission personally is, to use the things that I'm naturally talented at and gifted at to help others, pursue, whether it's their passion or, and also to, reach a level of, economic equality in certain communities. So my mission is to make sure that all people from everywhere have equal opportunity to health, education, and just, the opportunity to participate in the economic economy.
Dia, it was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
And wish you all the best with your organization.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for watching. If you missed any of our shows, you can catch them on our YouTube channel or on our website. Please do join us next week when we bring you another new interview. Until then, goodbye.
This series on women in science, technology, and business is brought to you by Zoho Corporation. Zoho is the operating system for business.